So I've gone through and penciled all the areas of where I'm going to be cutting using a carpenter's knife. So I'm just going to do like a one pass score. I want to make sure this line is nice and straight. The reason why I pencil it first is to make sure that I am staying on the line. Sometimes when the part moves around, the light reflects differently on the white. You kind of forget where your cut line is. In this corner I found if you just put just a little tiny bent there, not needing to push in too far or go too deep, it will still tear nicely. Now ideally after you cut this out, you'll still need to go with some files, hand files and sandpaper and clean up all your edges. You want a nice clean edge here because this is where the visor is going to be, obviously, and you want this return edge to look nice up against the visor. So this kind of comes to a point there, and then it has a nice curve. Now that I've gone all the way around, I want to cut the visor out first. I'll do a second pass. Let's see. Make sure it's going to go all the way through. I'll gently press inward. Get to the edge, I just want to make sure it's going to tear properly. Holding it inward is better than trying to pull outward because you've only scored halfway through the plastic. If you pull outward, you're working against your cut. There we go. So obviously this edge will be sanding it up, fixing all the corners, making them nice and sharp with the file, make sure this is nice and straight. But there's the faceplate to the FEM7 Trooper. Okay, so I've trimmed out the face to the FEM Trooper helmet. Now I'm going to be cleaning, cutting out the back. Already gone through and penciled. It's very important that you know that this area here is where you're going to glue the parts together. So you want to make sure you cut down below that step there, and then along the bottom, along the other side, coming up at this angle here, and across the top. Okay? So again, using your carpenter's knife, you just want to score this. Alright, so I've scored all the way around. Again, it's pushing away from the part. You want to be careful. If it's not wanting to go, don't force it. Find another area that'll nicely come apart, and there's the back half. Again, like I said, this is where you're going to be sanding, so your two parts will come together, you know, about like that on each side. Alright, so now I'm going to be cutting out the dome to the FEM7 helmet. This is going to be very important. You want to make sure that is a very clean cut, because when the dome goes on to the back area, the idea is not to Bondo this smooth. It's part of the decoration of the helmet to have sort of the lines in there where the parts come together. Same thing with the side of the helmet. So you want to really try to make really nice clean lines. So I penciled it just to make sure I know where my lines are. And again, it's taking your time with the knife and scoring through there. So I'm going to be really careful taking that side apart because my knife jumped a couple times. But again, you want to try to get a nice clean edge here. And you want to pull it away. If it starts to give you a little hang up, make sure you pull it away so you don't snag the plastic. Work it a little bit, and there you go. So I'll come back and I'll use a file to clean up those edges so it ends up being really nice and clean. So when the parts go together, let's see if I can hold this and show you. It's gonna fit something like that. Hopefully you can kind of see that. That's kind of hard to hold without being glued in place, but there you go. It kind of gives you an idea. Okay, so I'm going to show how we're going to glue the FEM7 Trooper helmet together using the Zap-A-Gap CA glue. I use the medium, also the spray kicker. Like to have at least one clamp on hand and paper towel. So it's set up that this recess area is where you're going to be doing the gluing. It's already been sanded, so it's prepped for gluing. I recommend having on nitrate or latex gloves whenever you're using Zap-A-Gap, and also you want to be in a well-vented area. For doing a project like this where it's using different pieces at once, it's nice to have an assistant to help you. So what I'll do is I'll be applying the glue, and then I have my buddy Danny here helping me, and I got Brian on the camera. Thanks, guys. So the idea is to put the glue on. I like to kind of do a zigzag fashion and then a little bit more. You don't want it to the point that it's going to run off, but you need to have a good considerable amount there. And what's important here is to make sure that this top end lines up. Dan, you can hold that there. Got it? Yep. All right. And then I'm going to work down here. What we want to achieve here is a nice gap between the front and the back. We're going to hold this in place, and then we're going to spray that. There we go. We just want to make sure that it's not going to move. For this design of the helmet, it's not going to have Bondo hiding this seam, so this is actually a decorative seam, so we want that to bond together quite well. All right, so you hold that for a few seconds. That's what's nice about CA glue, is it works quickly. Use the towel just to wipe off the extra residue from the spray. The other thing I'll do is I'll take some more CA glue and I'll run it on the inside here just to make sure that is completely glued in there as well. Then to get to the ends, sometimes I'll put a clamp on. If you can see that, just to make sure it's tight. Put a little bit more glue. Kick that. And then up here as well, I want to make sure that that's going to be, so I'll put just a tiny bit of glue in there. Put the clamp on, and then kick that. Just wait a few seconds. And that's good. Maybe I'll put a little bit more. I missed that little corner there. All right, so that side's done, and I'll do the same thing to the other side. Okay, so I'm going to show how to glue on the dome to the back of the FEM7 helmet. This is just sitting here. I just did a test fit just to see how it would line up. The glue is just going to go from this seam around to the other seam. You want to leave this little bit open so that when the dome goes on, there's room for the brow. It's going to sit about like that. There's room for the rubber brow, which will sit on the dome portion to fit around. Okay, so now I'm going to actually glue the dome on to the back area between this line, along this edge, and then stopping at this line. I'm leaving this space here so there's room for the brow that will affix to the front of the dome. So I'm using the Zap-A-Gap, and I'm just going to start near the top of the edge. I'm just putting in a tiny bit because gravity is going to make it run down. And when I slide the dome on, I don't want the glue to be exposed. So it's just a tiny bit. This stuff will definitely hold this dome in place, at least enough for me to make sure that it's positioned in place. I've waited a little while before doing the dome after gluing on the sides, just to make sure the fumes will dissipate, to give me a little bit of time to put this in place. Make sure it's in place. If you have to reach inside just to press against, I recommend that. So after this is fully cured a little bit more, before I use any kicker, I'll go back through with the CA glue and I'll run it along the inside edge as well. And I'll kick that just to help reinforce the glue, just like we did on the inside when we connected the face and the back together. But that's basically how it should look, creating a decorative seam that runs along the back of the helmet and the side of the helmet as well. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to put the brow trim and bottom neck ring trim on the FEM7 Trooper helmet. So this piece here is about 12 inches in length. What I'd like to do is start it right here at this edge. This already has adhesive inside, so you want to make sure that you put this on after your helmet is painted and thoroughly cured. So before I push it all the way up, I'm just going to work it around. Make sure that my distance between one edge to the other edge is good. I'd like to keep it as even from left to right as possible. Good from left to right. Okay. And then for the bottom trim, it's a little bit thinner, and it's approximately 30 inches in length. I like to try to find center on the back and start there. And again, slowly work around and pushing it completely in. Alright, so with this excess right here, this is important. You want to try to make the area here as seamless as possible. So I found if you pencil it just a little bit longer, about that much, once it's pushed into place, it should be relatively close. So I'll take the scissors and give yourself a little bit extra room so you can do multiple cuts if you need to. And push that in there. There you go. So there you go. It's pretty. You can always go back with the knife and trim out a little bit more if you need to. There you go, that's the bottom neck ring seal and the brow for the FEM7 Trooper helmet. Technique that I learned from Stephen Weir and some of the guys out in the UK. This actually sounds strange, but using newspaper, just black and white newspaper. You don't want to use anything that has any of the color add. The ink from the newspaper will transfer onto the helmet. What I've noticed is if you've gone through the hassle of polishing the helmet and making it perfectly smooth, the newspaper ink doesn't transfer very well. It actually works better if you've got semi sort of paint texture type finish, I guess is the word I'm looking for. So it has a little bit of that to grab onto. So you can take the newspaper, you can kind of wad it up as you will. I like to make sure I got some of the larger black ink area to use. You can kind of see what'll start to happen is going over some of these higher points is going to leave that detail, and that kind of gives that worn, weathered look. And you just go around as you wish, applying a little at a time, a little more. Personally, I like to try to look for any of the higher points and accent that by adding the marking from the newspaper. And if you want like more of like a heavy streak or battle damage mark, you can put your fingernail through and drag it, and you'll kind of get that effect. And if you don't like it, then you can use Novus polish, and if you put that on a paper towel, use like the Novus polish number 2, and put that on a paper towel and kind of rub that back out, then you can erase that. Or use it, keep on going. Now what's going to happen is when you're wearing this, you're bound to get different battle damage marks or scuff marks just from natural wear and tear. But for this particular character, I was kind of going for that pre-worn look, so this is just a simple method to achieve that. So just carry on throughout the whole armor, adding a little bit at a time, adding more. With the helmet and your armor as well. Kind of make sure that they're both somewhat along the same range of weather or battle damage. There you go. All right, so this is the template for the FEM7 Trooper visor. All right, so using a stick lighter or barbecue lighter, whatever you want to call it, is preferred. If you're using a small little lighter, it'd probably get too hot near your fingers. But this is a pretty good method to go over the edging, just to kind of soften that up, kind of smooth out where you did all the cuts. Takes a little time, and it will be hot, obviously, so you want to let it cool down before you put it into the helmet. The inside of the helmet, we've already glued in the tabs. Using the template, putting that in, holding up to the light, make sure you got a good even balance between left and right, and marking where you're going to put those tabs. Make sure that they're upward so that the visor can slide down in. And then the trick is to take the visor in your hand, bend it like that. What you want to do is get this edge and that edge in those clips first. I don't know how easy that is going to be to show you here, but so I put it in the one side and then put it in the other side, and then you put in the top ones slowly, and then you slide the visor down, and it fits in there like that. Okay, so for the headband, we've created a sandwich with Velcro, I guess you could say. We've got the hook side on the outside, fuzzy on the inside, and that's basically sandwiching the headband in here. That's going to keep the headband where it needs to be inside the helmet. So then that means obviously the fuzzy that'll be attaching here needs to get affixed to the inside of the helmet. I've already kind of measured out where this is going to go. See how I slide that in here, right? And I've penciled that in, okay, on each side to give me an idea of placement of where the Velcro needs to be. Now, it actually needs to overlap part of the visor, and that's going to do two things. That's going to help keep the visor in place, as well as obviously hold the headband where it needs to be. So it's really important that you've made all your final adjustments with your visor. Make sure that it's pushed down completely into the clips before you apply the Velcro. So now you've got that in place. You'll squeeze this together with your hand, bring this in place, and then you'll align the Velcro on there. And then I'm going to turn this over and align it on this side. And I'll press that in. Press that in. So now you've got the headliner in place. And this is adjustable, so you can turn this knob and adjust it as you need to make sure that you get the proper fit. Okay, so I'm going to show how to apply the decals to the FEM7 helmet. The decals will be like this. First thing I want to do is go ahead and separate. This is the long strip that'll go in the back. I like to try to cut about an even amount on each side. It'll make it easier when you apply it later. And then you want to cut this in half as well. Okay, so this will be your left and right side, and that'll be the back. So I've already got this set cut right here, and I've applied this one. So it's important that you have that at 1.25 inches there, and then that's where that's going to start. I put a little tiny pencil mark. So if you line that up, I put a little tiny pencil mark there as a guide of where, if that came down, that's where that would line up. And it might be hard to tell, but there's this crease in the helmet that runs about where my pencil is, as well as down here. So I want to put these tube stripes between that section. and 1.25 inches from the cut edge. So I just gently apply that on there, and I'll be doing the other side. And then for the back, this one's a little trickier. It's going to be fit right about like that. So these corners are going to be kind of my guide, letting me know that I'm not too far to the left or to the right. There we go. So I want the distance between here and the decal to be level. So again, I'll rub that on, and then I can peel the that off. Make sure it's completely on. And again, same here. Give that a rub. Make sure that they're fully intact. And peel that at like a really sharp angle. That'll make sure that they're not going to peel up with it. And there you go. That's how it should look.